Christene Marie. Tonight, we are talking about something really real time for me. For the most part, in my life, I very much so stay out of drama and conflict, and I just have a very peaceful inner world, I guess you can say. And with that, there's something that goes to, I guess, being said for like, there's a cost, I guess, with maintaining that type of peace because usually it means that you're not in close relationships with people who might cause uh, disruption or lack of peace. And so, to that point, I feel like there's something around making a decision of how do I want to live my life? What are my values? Especially when we start moving from being so strong vertically, knowing that our compass is no longer broken. We're not looking to the right and to the left, east and west, but we're looking north and we're navigating north and we're looking to live vertical in terms of who we were made to be, how we're called to live, what is the reason why we're here in the first place. So once we're really strong vertically, to then live horizontally and maintain vertical alignment while living in this horizontal physical world, that honestly in 2025 was probably one of the hardest things that I've had to move through and figure out. How do I maintain my sense of self while engaging with other people? Because when I was alone, I kept my sense of self 100%. When I was with people that I didn't know, I kept my sense of self. And when I was with people that I didn't really care what they thought and I didn't really care their opinion of me, I was able to keep my alignment. But as I started to move into deeper and deeper relationships, even just with my sisters and friends, man, it's really been tempting. It's been hard to maintain that strength of self. And I actually saw myself just dipping into codependency. I mean, I got married when I was 20. I started dating at 18, maybe 19. So I was with my husband for a very short time before we got married. And so much of my married life, so much of my 20s was very much so predicated on me living in reaction, living in response to who everyone thought I should be. And there was something about the last 4 years, ever since my husband left, that I just kind of became a recluse and I just kind of hid. And I was like, let me figure out who I am because I had no idea. I grew up in a very Christian conservative environment. And so there wasn't much encouragement for figuring out who we were because there was the belief that who we are innately is very sinful and evil. And so, why take time to get to know yourself because who you are is not lovable? And not even just not lovable, but it's sinful. It's actually bad. So, as I was married, I was sharing a little bit on Sunday as we were talking about the difference between truth versus experience. I shared a little bit about the need to recover my sense of intuition because when I turned 20 and I was just living so much in reaction and in response to who my husband and everyone around me wanted me to be, I really, really lost a connection to my own inner compass. So, this last year, as I've been moving back into, okay, well, who am I to begin with? What do I like? What do I value? The question of what do I want was really, really hard for me to uncover. And as I've come to this place of knowing that, now it's like, okay, well, how do I maintain this sense of self while living with other people? And so tonight we're going to talk about while living with other people, how do we actually control our minds? But before I lean in, I just want to take a moment to say hello to everyone who's joining. I'm live on a couple different channels, YouTube, a couple different YouTube channels, and a few others. Y'all, thank you so much for joining today. Lender Jr., thank you for joining. You asked a question, and I wanted to answer that. You said, "Are your streams on some kind of timer? They always just suddenly end." No, I'll like end it. I have the ability to click end stream. And I don't know if they end suddenly for you, but oh my gosh, you know what I wonder? Sometimes it will count down 3, 2, 1, and then I'll go live. But by the time it connects to the platform, it's like I'm already going. And so I wonder if it does the same thing when I end. That's really annoying. So maybe what I need to do is actually stay on a little bit longer so that the timing, because I'm going live via Restream and I have my my platform's hooked up to it, but I wonder if that's why it's weird and it seems like I end suddenly. But anyways, y'all, thank you for joining. You suffer. Thank you for coming on here. Sticks, Jonas, the goat. Thank you for coming. Fan love. You asked, what's your favorite color? I think my favorite color, I don't know. I really love color. I love pink. I love white. I love turquoise. I love gold. I'm starting to really like vibrant colors too, like green. I love that you asked that. I don't even know how to say this. 𝐥𝐢𝐯𝐞. We'll just go with that. It's good to see you guys tonight. King Jesus, thank you for coming on here. Pokestock. Y'all, tonight we're going to be talking about, as we're engaging with our minds in relationship to other people, how do we maintain control of it? Because as we're doing this balance, as we're trying to maintain connection with ourself, being led by who we truly are, rather than just living in reaction, but being proactive, while also maintaining healthy relationships. I really believe this. I think one of the most, I think, damaging and also dangerous, but also equally powerful for good parts of our bodies and ourselves that we have not learned how to control is our mind. And I've been seeing this more and more over the last few months. Even, I've hosted a number of knowing retreats, which is where all of us will come together. We'll actually stay in a house, and it's like a big sleepover, and it's for 4 days. And I call it the boot camp of the soul. We just go so deep and we address really hard questions, and like no one is off the hook. We go deep for every single one of us, and it's really a revealing time where we really uncover things that we had hid, that we didn't know that we hid, things we suppressed we didn't know we suppressed. And as we come to uncover and uproot them, it's really, really wild what we find. And what's hidden inside of us is a subconscious narrative, so often about the world, about other people, and about ourselves. And so those subconscious narratives, those scripts, are what is running on default, on autopilot, kind of like beneath the layer, beneath the surface. And if we're not paying so much attention to them, they're going to be the scripts that we're living our life according to. And they're going to be the things that we're actually obeying, that we're becoming subservient to. I like that word subservient, because there's something that effectively, when we're living aligned, we're living with God at the pinnacle of our hierarchy. So God, some superordinate principle, something that is bigger than you and me. And then underneath that is our own ideals that we've identified for ourselves. And then underneath the divine and ideals, we bring everything into subservience. We submit, we surrender, we say, okay, we will live according to what you set forth. And what's cool about that is that we have just as much power to say what it is that we want to live our lives according to. This is a little bit of a tricky thing. So bear with me, because I don't think I've ever really said this before. So I'll probably be kind of navigate it in an elongated way. When we are activating all of our intelligences, intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual, we will probably find that there are some things that we don't want to do emotionally that intellectually we know we need to do. Like, I am heading into a season where I know I actually need to be so disciplined if I want to get to the next level in my business. I don't want to do that, but I need to do that. And so actually there is a part of me that wants to. And so the part of me that doesn't want to, frankly, the part of me that loves to take the easy way out, that part of me needs to come into subservience to the part of me that is louder and greater because of the ultimate ideal that's at the hierarchy of the pyramid. And so if we don't identify what those hierarchical values are, we can't bring things under alignment and into subservience to that. So you and I identifying, well, what do I want? What are my ideals? What are the greater wants than those that are like momentary and finite? What are the ones that are going to outlive me when it comes to a legacy, to a life that I'm going to be proud of? Yes, here in this moment, I want the easy way out. But what is the higher want that doesn't allow for complacency, that doesn't allow for kicking up my feet and wasting my time? And then it's allowing for each one of our intellects and intelligences to come online and add weight and balance to our lives. Because then, if we didn't listen to, perhaps it is the emotional part of us, it's like, well, I also genuinely want to live a peaceful life. So now these two need to battle out. How does discipline and peace coexist? Which one is greater? Can they coexist in different ways throughout the day? Maybe discipline is more so in the morning and peace is in the evening. It becomes so much more exciting when we allow for the nuance of color. That's why I loved your question of like, what's your favorite color, Fan Love, that you asked. That's actually a really fun question for us to consider, even as adults. You know, we think of that question a lot as kids, but as adults, there's something really fun about that, because so often it's easier to live in black and white. It's easier to live in dogmatic thinking. It's actually easier for us to believe in one way or that way, rather than the full range and spectrum of color that's just making the world so much more bright and so much more engaging for us to live in. And so, as I'm thinking about the hierarchy of wants and needs, and then bringing everything into alignment under our ideal, if we don't know at the end of the day what our calling is, we can't, or we can, but I think it's way harder for us to create the ideals in support of that calling. So when I think of, who does God say that I am? Who does like, why am I here? What are my unique giftings and the call for me to kind of rise up and become that person? There's something really cool about that, because then I actually get to bring the very real feelings and emotions into obedience to that. And so the same thing goes with our mind. What am I going to think about? How is what I choose to think about actually going into effectively obedience to those ideals and who I say I want to be, my values, this higher call, this higher principle? So I just want to take a quick moment to check here in on the chat. I am just taking a look here. You know what I'm be super curious about? Tommy Schaefer. Oh, hey, I'm so happy to see you. Oh, I just saw you on LinkedIn. This is so happy. I'm seeing a couple of comments here that I would be super curious with. Jayanta, if you're still here, I would love to hear what you think. Here's something that's fun, is that part of us going live, I've been going live every day for, I think, about 200 days. I am learning so much as I go live, and I learn through and by way of your comments and by way of just my own verbal processing. So I would love to hear, if you don't agree with something, please tell me what you do think, because it is so much easier to just say, I don't agree, rather than saying why. And the why is really what allows for us to have a genuine conversation. Why is what allows for, it's like the exploration of the human soul. I found that as I was trying to get to know myself, until I asked why of something, I never got to the root of it. And if we don't get to the root of it, we can never pull it out and plant something new in its place. So if we don't like something about ourselves or in somebody else, unless we get to the why, we're never going to be able to actually move forward, because we're just stuck at kind of like what's shown. It's like the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the water, there's just this whole mound. And if we're solely fixated on the tippy top that we see, man, it's like going in circles. I actually was thinking about this today, because I've just been having a hard time in a particular relationship over the last 24 hours. And it's been so painful and so hard. And I know that so much of what's happening, I have no idea about. I really don't know what's going on underneath the surface for that person. And until I sit and ask why for myself, I'm not going to know what's going on for me either. And so it becomes incredibly dangerous. It's a whole conversation we were having the other day about truth versus experience. If we don't actually take the time to sit with our experience and how we feel, what we're thinking, and tracing the roots down to the genesis, the origin moment of what happened to cause this thought, to cause the emotion, how is the past playing into the present today? Can I differentiate the two and see clearly for what's really going on? And if we don't know how to do that for ourselves, it's going to be impossible for us to be able to do that for our partner and then have empathy to sit in their experience. Now their experience just feels so foreign because we don't even know our own. And I think the reverse is true also. like when I was going through my 20s and never knew myself, I would only ever sit in my husband's experience. And then when I started sitting in my own, I realized, oh, like there's a whole other world that's being opened up here. And that's, man, isn't that exciting that there's this whole other dimension. It's like the Y and X axis. Well, there's a Z axis too. It's like so dimensional when it comes to relationships. So the black and white, that's why I love the original question of what's your favorite color. There's just so much color that comes from and with being curious and really truly wanting to know. I think that's another thing too. Are we asking questions looking for someone to prove our point? Or are we asking questions because we really genuinely want to know? And once we stop being curious, it is so damaging because we can't hear. Someone said this one time, and I actually put this in my book because I just thought it was the most brilliant analogy of what happens so often in relationships. This woman says, words come out of my mouth, and by the time they reach my husband's ears, they have twisted. So he literally hears and interprets something that I did not say. And it was so interesting. I've seen this actually a couple of times for me where I'll put actually a recorded transcript of a conversation into ChatGPT. ChatGPT wasn't there. It didn't hear the context. It didn't hear the tone of voice. It doesn't have all of that additional context of just the relationship in general. It doesn't have the context of the traumas of the other person. It doesn't have the context of your own trauma and what you're working on and growing in. So if you ask ChatGPT its opinion, boy, is it going to be so opinionated and potentially very wrong. And it's kind of dangerous sometimes. So I really encourage each one of us to take the time to know our experience for us, because I have found for myself, it's been tempting to get lazy, to run my experience, a recorded conversation, let's say, through a GPT and tell me how I'm feeling, rather than sitting with my own self and doing the work. It's work. It really, truly is work. Every morning, I'll pursue vertical alignment. So, this concept of vertical alignment, bringing my beliefs, my behaviors, my attitudes, my actions under alignment of my own ideals, under the superordinate principle that is effectively higher than all of us. In that principle is also the practice of every morning literally awakening each one of my intelligence centers, activating them, and checking in with each one. What does each one of you have to tell me? What do I not know? What do you remember from yesterday? What do you remember from the past? How is that showing up here right now? How can I proceed in my day and in my life in control of myself rather than other people being in the driver's seat of my life? And the same goes with our minds. If we are not taking the time every single day, ideally for me, it's in the morning, to pull that subconscious script that's running into my conscious awareness, I have to be aware first. So pulling that subconscious script into consciousness, analyzing it, putting it out in front of me and saying, "Oh, what's going on here? What am I actually thinking? What is going on? What's the script?" So let me first become aware of it. Next, let me understand it, asking the why, tracing it down to the origin moment or memory or experience that formed that script and narrative to begin with. And then being able to express it, whether it's expressing it through journaling, expressing it to a partner, expressing it through prayer or meditation, getting it out, releasing it, letting it go. There's this biblical concept which I just think is so beautiful, and there's so much narrative and story that's a good example for us in the biblical text among so many other books. But this story in particular resonated so much with me. There's a woman who desperately wants a child. And after years and years of praying and asking for a boy, she goes to the temple where in the story, that's where God is. So she actually physically goes, she takes physical action. She goes to the temple, and the verse says she pours out her soul before God. And there's something in the pouring out that creates space now for us to receive. We actually have to release it. We have to let it go. So we have to first become aware of the subconscious script that's running in our brain. We have to understand it by asking why, tracing the memories down to the original moment. And then we have to express it, pour it out, get rid of it, release it. And by way of doing that becomes like a it's a transformational process that thereby we experience freedom. freedom from that subconscious script. And then we get to say, okay, well, what do I want it to be instead? We don't always have to abide by these old narratives, by these old scripts, by these old mantras or stories or programs or patterns, but we get to create our own only after we've done that work to become aware of it, understand it, express it, pour it out, release it, get rid of it, and then we plant something new. There's a book by James Allen called As a Man Thinketh, and it talks about our minds being like a garden. And I just really like that concept because what it allows for is I'm pulling out an old narrative, an old story, an old script, and I'm planting something new in its place because I don't want to think that way. I don't want to be, because I know, here's the thing, the thoughts of us guide our actions. The thoughts of us guide the way we interact with people. Our thoughts guide who we are. So, who do I want to be? Now let's work backwards to then train our minds to think according to the person that I want to be. I want to be someone who is so incredibly impactful. So now working backwards, I need to instill discipline into my life. Okay, working backwards from there. How do I instill discipline? A lot of it has to do with thoughts. I wake up in the morning. What is my immediate thought that tricks me to stay in bed? Now that's the thought that I really need to uproot and pull out and put something new in its place, because otherwise my actions and my body, my behavior are actually acting in subservience to whatever thought is at the helm of the ship. And so if I want my life to look different than it is today, I need to change my thoughts. And before every thought, there's an internal belief. So it's very layered. That's why, this whole concept of what's your favorite color is just so fun. So fan love, thank you for asking that 20 minutes ago. I just love it because it comes full circle. It comes just so much more broad and so much more dimensional when we realize how much knowing ourselves really deeply, truly matters. Getting to know who we are is probably one of the most greatest of all human pursuits. And we have full power and full control over our lives. We get to pull the levers of our lives. So before I keep going, I just want to do a quick check-in on YouTube. I'm pretty behind in comments, so bear with me while I catch up on these. Bonnie Michael, thank you for joining. Treadman, thank you for coming on here. Boo Boo, you said, I think you're acting. I actually love acting. It's funny that you say that. I was in a Hallmark type of movie. I was in a Christmas movie 2 years ago, and that was like the fulfillment of a childhood dream. So if you caught the acting thing, I love acting. And I got to tell you, it's been a really good practice for me to like just be so grounded and authentic during these lives, because there is something like there's a camera in front of you. You know what I mean? And so even this concept of controlling your mind, there's different tricks that you and I can put into place to help us control our minds. I will literally, and I've experienced this, I'm on day, whatever it is, 200 something of going live every day. And there have been different things that I've had to put in place to maintain a state of presence and cognitive presence and awareness. I can't look at how many people are live with me. If I look at that number, it makes me distracted. And so I have to just be fully present with you. And even as I've turned on the comments here, that's like, I have to ignore that until I'm ready to like dive into the comments. So it is really hard. Tommy, you just said, I love you. You're so wonderful. I'm so glad you're here tonight. I'm so glad you jumped in. Thank you for joining. Naveen, you said you're from India. I am from, where am I from? Maryland. I'm here in Maryland right now. I'm actually at my parents' house. I came over to my parents tonight and we just had such a wonderful dinner and it was so much fun. Tommy, you said, but on to business. I love that both you and Qasim really press into people during your talks and presentations for critical feedback and sincere disagreement. Love it. Love it. I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes I do wonder, like I've been turning on comments for probably 3 weeks now. And I worry sometimes. I'm like, am I just going to read something that all of a sudden they say a bad word or something super inappropriate? I get some really inappropriate comments. So sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to see? So thank you for saying that. But I will also say on the flip side, the comments it's been so encouraging. It's been so encouraging to see questions. Like even Lendl Jr., you say here, do you regret marrying at 20? No. I did the best I knew then. And I actually think that that's even in answering this, I like feel a pit in my stomach because there's emotion there, obviously. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things for all of us is if we can acknowledge and show grace for the best that we did at that time. Now, if I had done something I didn't know was right, I didn't believe was right, and then I made an action, that's different. But I really, man, did I love that man? Man, did I think I was doing the right thing? Man, would I have done the exact same thing all over again with what I knew? What I know now, I wouldn't have done that. I don't think that, we probably would have ended up together with what I know now. Just neither one of us had cultivated emotional intelligence. We only had cultivated half of ourselves. When you're only half a person, it's so incredibly difficult to know what you're missing. And so that's why I feel so strongly about the cultivation of emotional intelligence for parents, for communities, for couples. I mean, relationships are so hard and we're not taught how to exist in relationships. So, no, I don't regret it. And you know what? Here's another thing. I actually see so clearly how that's such a beautiful part of my story because I now know my calling in a way that I don't know if I would have before. So hopefully I would have, but I think that there's something about recognizing the brokenness that we've experienced and actually feeling finally grateful for it so that we can live this life right now. I really like my life. And that's something that there was an experiment done where it was, I don't remember, actually, this was told to me. So I will say this loosely. There was an experiment that I hear was done, and it was a whole bunch of blind participants, and they were just asked a question around if they were given the opportunity to trade their lives, and they all said yes. And then they said, "Who would you trade your life with?" That was the second question. So the first question, "Would you trade your life?" They said yes, and then the second question is, "Who would you trade your life with?" None of them answered any person, and then they decided that they would keep their life. I think that's the thing for so many of us. The grass is always greener until we have the opportunity to actually experience their life, and suddenly it's not all that wonderful. And so I just feel such a commitment to making my life wonderful and living a life that I love. In October, I sat and asked myself, what do I want my relationships with my parents to look like? And that really impacted some of the decisions I was making. And I decided literally that next week, I hopped on a plane, went to Rome, and did a 10-day cruise with them because I realized I would regret that. But if we're not consciously living with an awareness of what is my ideal, what do I want, then we're going to end up living in regrets. So let me go back to the chat really fast. Lendl, thank you for asking that. I think that that's such an important question. Okay, going back to some of these. All right. I'm not going to be able to go up to the top. I jumped down. Okay, no, I did. Okay, perfect. Lily Pugh, thank you for joining. Caesar, thank you for coming on here. Jack Huber, Willie Pugh, you said, what does, I'm just going to read this because I may not be able to get to it quickly. You say, what it means is that you're about science, you're about your life, you're about your health, you're about the pursuit of science, your life, health, and strength, and the medical practice enlightenment. From what I gather from what you're saying, I think it's so important that we don't view the parts of us as disparate from each other. We're so integrated. And the moment we start viewing ourselves as parts and pieces, man, that's so dangerous. Rather than, oh, I am one big whole. So if I'm unhealthy here, man, that's going to impact everywhere else. And so the more I'm pursuing health across the board and knowledge and understanding, the more healthy, vibrant people we're going to be. Tommy, you just said, great question on favorite color. I certainly have my favorite colors and styles and design, but the best color is white, of course, because it is the presence of all colors. Oh, I love that. And then you said, well, this is my mechanical engineer self-checking in, as long as we are talking about like light, not pigment, because of my Technicolor theater self. I didn't know you did theater. That's so fun. I love that. Yes, white is the presence of all colors. That's so fun. I I love Willie Pugh. You said, don't to people you'll say, "Stop invaders, get out of my life. I don't need your negativity in my atmosphere. Remove yourself." Willie, I love that. And there's something someone told me one time that really blew my mind. He said, "Your boundaries are for you to honor, not for them to honor." And that was so, kind of like a nice slap in the face. I was like, "Thank you for that," because I had been putting boundaries in and getting so upset, like, confused. Like, it was like my brain actually didn't have a way to process. I'm like, "I told you I'm going offline." There was this moment where I texted my whole family and I said, "Hey, guys, I'm going, dark for 2 weeks. I'm working on a book." And I said, "Okay, everybody, time starts now." Literally within 60 seconds, somebody calls me from my family who had just received that message, and I just felt dumbfounded. I was like, "Did you not receive that message? Did you not see what I meant? What are you doing?" It was like my brain didn't have a category or a compartment for that until my friend told me, "Your boundaries are for you." It doesn't matter. My therapist actually recommended to me, she was like, "That's actually, what a good way to encounter that crossing of boundary is." Oh, it's so typical of them, isn't that funny? And kind of like laugh it off because the intent of that person was so wonderful and so loving, and I didn't want to be disturbed. So, what I could do, there's so many things I could do to actually enforce that boundary. I can turn off my phone. Like, if I genuinely don't want to be disturbed, I can literally turn my phone off, among many other things. I can also just not answer it. I can also be emotionally at peace where somebody does not have that much power over me. The book, Letting Go by David Hawkins, has been so, so helpful for me. Basically, if I'm truly at peace here, then somebody else coming in here and tapping at my door, I'm at peace. It's okay. No problem. I'm going to let it go. Rather than I'm at peace, somebody knocks on my door, and immediately I swoop down levels and I'm like, "What? Why are you bothering me?" And that was so good because honestly, with this whole conversation around vertical versus horizontal alignment, I found myself doing so well alone and then hardly at all in relationship. And even just this weekend, I was hosting a knowing retreat and I asked the attendees, I said, "What was the healthiest you've ever been in your life?" And every single one of them said when they were alone. And that's remarkable. And that's really, it was a good takeaway for me because I feel that, I sense that of, oh yeah, like I actually feel more in control. I feel more safe. I feel more aligned when I'm by myself. And we're not meant to live by ourselves. We're actually meant to know how to do relationships and maintain our peace and our presence and our ability to engage with others from a place of love. But if we're not taking that alone time first and then engaging with people on an empty tank, of course it's going to cause chaos and cause ruptures and just all the problems. So I appreciate you saying that. Dr. Drew, we are chatting about just the concept of controlling our mind, and so much of that has to do with controlling just ourselves and activating all of our parts and turning all of us online. Um, uh, and then Lendl Jr., you're just wonderful. King Jesus, thank you for your notes here. Stanley, it's good to see you on here. Just looking through some of the chats. I love that your name is Alvin Chipmunk. I hope you've seen that movie. It's so funny. Change Forever, hello. I am doing so well. Thank you so much for coming on here. Dr. Drew, maybe I will do that tomorrow night. Tommy, you said some of the best things that I have learned about life, I learned during my deep studies of improv. Oh, I love that. It's so funny. I have never done improv studies, but I have seen other people who do improv and they just have this ability to think on their feet so quickly and also this ability to listen. There's something about the play on words with improv that I've heard people say, but you need to really be a good listener in order to do that. So I love that. Goob, thank you for coming. You said, "If you don't like the comments, then don't make your private life public." I completely agree. Honestly, it's been I'm not sure at what point you said that, but it's been really rewarding and fulfilling seeing and engaging with the comments. It's hard. And what's hard doesn't mean it's bad. And I think that's a big thing that I've really come to learn over the past probably 2 years. The hardest things have actually been the most rewarding. They've really they've really been probably the most transformative for me. The more difficult they are, the more I grow. But I had to learn to cultivate the discomfort muscle. Like I had to learn to sit in the discomfort of not liking what I see, not liking what I hear. But that muscle was cultivated by first looking at myself and seeing what I didn't like. That way, when other people come and tell me what they don't like, I either already know because I've engaged with that, or I can let it go again to maintain my peace, because at the end of the day, I have to look at myself in the mirror. Nobody else has to, everyone else is looking in their own mirror. Yes, it's easier to look in the mirror of somebody else and point out all their flaws. But if we're not willing to look in our own fight, oh, that's something I need to grow in. That's something I need to heal from. We have enough. There's this verse that says, today has enough troubles of its own. You and I have enough worries on our own. We don't need to be looking at other people. And so the more I'm actually in the arena of my life, Teddy Roosevelt has this incredible speech. It's called Citizens in the Republic. I believe it was delivered 1912 in Paris. I think that's when it was. I think so. I don't know. I will Google it later. But the Citizens in the Republic. And then there's a section in that speech called The Man in the Arena. And there's this concept of like everyone's in the arena and everyone outside of the arena is pointing and laughing and mocking and just making fun of the person who's really trying. But if I'm in the arena, I don't have time to think about what they're thinking. I'm head down, engaging, grappling, viscerally engaged with life. The second I have a moment to judge means that I'm not in the arena. And so then it comes again full circle back to, what do I even want in the first place? Now let me order my mind, my body, my soul, and my spirit to be in submission to what I want, to the call on my life, to how do we want to live. And so it's really just asking those questions for ourselves. Um, Tommy, I just saw you posted. I absolutely drilled in all my classes for improv. Stop thinking about when it's your turn to speak. Focus on when it's your time to listen. Hands down, so applicable to life. I so agree. I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for that. I think that that's probably one of the most important takeaways. And y'all, this comes back to the very topic of our conversation. If you don't control your mind, if you're not the one in the driver's seat of your mind, something else will be. So who are we listening to? What's the script? Who's the source of the script? And do we even know what that is? So I just saw that Jesus King, you said Rome is great. I love Rome. I feel like I was only there for a couple of days and I really would love to go back and really explore. Went to the Colosseum and it was so powerful. One of the things, I'm curious if you enjoy this too, but one of the things that I really, really love doing when I'm in other countries or cities is turning on music and just being like so raptured in the moment there as I'm walking. When I'm traveling with family, it's so fun and so wonderful, but it's harder to be fully present. And so putting in the music and like igniting all of my senses is one of my favorite ways of just really being truly present in that city. And it's so magical. Dr. Drew, or Mr. Drew, I'm sorry, you asked, what do you do? I have a branding and marketing business, and there's a couple different manifestations of that. One vertical is home services. My family has a 100-year-old painting business, and so I'm pretty involved in that. And then we do digital marketing for other trades businesses. We serve as fractional chief marketing officer, and I do retreats where we talk about things like this because, frankly, the more we know who we are, the more we can show up in a digital space, online, our brand, our website, our service offerings, but also with our family in a way that's so in alignment with who we say we want to be. So I work with people across the board in multiple different facets. So it really just depends on what it is that they're looking for. If they're looking, and obviously I'm not everything to everyone. Those are kind of my 3 areas of expertise: branding and marketing, digital marketing, and this whole concept of knowing and working with folks one-on-one or in a group setting. So actually, it was so fun. I really, really loved this. Last year, in 2025, I went to Colombia, and I did a whole kind of retreat with the team, and we just got to know each other. And by way of doing that, they really came to appreciate each other in a much deeper way, because it's so easy when you don't understand who each other is. It's hard to have an appreciation and value for them, for their role, for their participation in the business, and then resentment builds. Tommy, you said, I love the man in the arena. Love that you just quoted that. I so appreciate you, my friend. You're wonderful. Nick and Jessica, thank you so much for joining. Y'all, I have been going for about 40 minutes now, and it's about my bedtime. So I'm going to hop off here. Lendl Jr., I'm mindful of what you said, that these will just randomly stop midway through and end abruptly. So I'm wondering, I'm going to test this out and end the stream, but I'm going to wait a minute or two. So I'm going to say thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I will see you tomorrow morning. I started a new sub-series on The Knowing Show, A Course in Miracles. I've been reading through it every morning since the first. My goal and my prayer is that I will read this every single day as kind of like part 1 of The Knowing Show, and then go live in the evenings around 8:30 Eastern. I can't do that every day, but for now, that's my goal. So I will see you tomorrow early in the day for A Course in Miracles reading. Just, again, kind of getting ourselves aligned with who we want to be. And then I will see you tomorrow evening for The Knowing Show. So with that, thank you all so much for joining me tonight, y'all. This knowing really is what I feel called to, cultivating emotional intelligence, growing myself. And I just am so grateful for you being here with me. So I'm going to press end and just see if this ends abruptly. So with that,